Real people, real confessions, the stories you weren't supposed to hear. Welcome to Beyond Reddit Stories. I never thought I'd tell this story out loud. Growing up, I wasn't anyone special, just a regular kid from a quiet neighborhood, holding on to the memory of the woman who gave me life. My mother. She died when I was still young. And honestly, I thought the worst pain was already behind me. I thought losing her was the cruelest thing life could do to me. I was wrong. Because years later, my father remarried. And that woman didn't just want to become a part of my life, she wanted to erase everything that came before her. She looked around our home, the photos, the keepsakes, the old stories I still clung to, and it was like she saw them as contamination, something she needed to disinfect. At first, I tried to stay quiet. I tried to accept that maybe my father deserved a second chance at happiness, that maybe I could learn to live with her. But it didn't take long for me to realize something disturbing. She didn't just marry my father. She wanted to destroy my mother's existence. Every time she spoke about the past, she called it dead weight. When she touched my mother's belongings, she acted like it was trash that needed to be thrown out. I caught her whispering to my father about how we need a fresh start, and the old memories are holding this family back. That was when I understood my father moving on wasn't the real betrayal. The betrayal was letting a stranger walk in and slowly burn away everything my mother had ever meant to me. So I'm telling this story not because I want pity or because I haven't moved on, but because I want you to imagine this. What if someone walked into your life, married your surviving parent, and then tried to delete the memory of the person who raised you? Would you stay silent or would you fight? My name is Evan. I'm 28 years old now, and I work as a graphic designer. I live in a small town just outside of Portland, nothing fancy, but it's the kind of place where everyone knows each other's parents. In fact, that's partly why this story hits so hard. Because memories linger in small towns. People remember who your mother was. They remember how she smiled, how she spoke, how she volunteered at the school library and brought cupcakes to every fundraiser. I was 12 when she died. Still a kid, too young to truly understand death, but old enough to feel the hole it left behind. She passed away after battling a lung infection that turned into pneumonia. It was sudden. 1 week she had a fever. The next thing I knew, I was holding my dad's hand at the hospital while he tried to keep himself from collapsing. My dad, Harold, worked as a high school math teacher. He was quiet, serious, one of those old-fashioned provider types. For years after she died, it was just the two of us in that house. We did our best. We ate dinners in silence, went grocery shopping together, tried to fill the spaces she used to fill. He even let me keep her old room the way it was, like a little shrine. Her clothes still in the closet, her perfume still on the dresser. I grew into my teenage years with a kind of numbness. I wasn't a problem kid. I got decent grades, came home on time, worked part-time at a local art store. I didn't get into drugs or get expelled or anything. I think I just floated. People called me quiet or the kid whose mom died, and I carried that label like a worn-out sweater. When I turned 18, I moved out for college, but I still went home nearly every weekend. My dad always looked happier when I was there. We'd watch old movies she used to love. Sometimes I would catch him staring at the family photo in the hallway, and I'd pretend I didn't notice him wiping his eyes. The point is, I wasn't some damaged, lost cause. I was a regular person carrying grief in the background, learning to function like everyone else. I still had hopes. I still dated someone. I still joked around with friends. I thought I was healing. But everything changed when I was 24, and my dad told me he'd met someone. A woman named Jean. He said she was sweet, kind, and that she made him laugh again. At first, I felt happy for him. Truly, I wanted him to feel alive. I just didn't know that the price of his new happiness would be the erasure of everything I'd spent my life holding on to. Jean moved in not long after they got married. It was fast, too fast. The first week, she was polite, overly polite. She'd smile at me at dinner and ask about my job, like she actually cared. I tried to respond, tried to be respectful, but something felt off. It was her tone, the way she referred to the house as hers, the way she said, "I'm thinking we repaint my bedroom." My mother's bedroom. At first I thought maybe she just didn't know. Maybe Dad never told her that room used to belong to Mom. So one evening, I gently mentioned it. I said, That's the room Mom used to sleep in. Jean looked right at me, and she smiled this tight, dismissive smile and said, "Well, that was a long time ago, honey. Things have to change eventually." I felt my skin crawl. It wasn't what she said, it was how she said it. Like my mother was just old furniture. The next day, I came home from work and the room was almost empty. Mom's perfume, gone. Her framed photo next to the bed, gone. The floral quilt she used during chemo, gone. I ran downstairs and confronted Dad. He just looked tired. He said Jean was trying to make the house feel like home for everyone. For everyone. As if my mother was never part of that everyone. That week, I started having trouble sleeping every time I closed my eyes. I kept imagining Jean walking through the halls with a trash bag, ripping pieces of my childhood off the walls. I'd wake up sweating, hearing the echo of her voice saying dead weight, dead weight. It felt like she was haunting me, not the other way around. She started replacing photographs. Where my mother's face once smiled from the mantel, now there was a framed picture of Jean and my dad on a cruise. She even tried to put up a wedding portrait of them in the exact spot my parents' wedding photo used to be. I tried to move that old photo back. The next day, it disappeared again. It became a war, quiet, invisible, psychological torture. Every morning before going to work, I'd check to see if my mother's things were still there. Then each day I'd find something missing: a vase, a card, the old curtains my mom sewed by hand. Jean would hum while she threw things out. Sometimes I'd hear her humming in the hallway, and I'd freeze. I started sneaking into the attic just to rescue whatever I could before she touched it. And the worst part? My dad stopped talking about Mom completely. One day, I said her name at breakfast. Jean was pouring coffee, and she shot me a look so venomous it made my stomach twist. Dad changed the subject like nothing happened. That's when it hit me. It wasn't just my mother's belongings being erased. It was her very existence. Her name had become taboo. I felt myself unraveling. I'd stare at Jean walking around the kitchen like she owned my memories. And I swear there were moments I wondered if she got pleasure from it. If this was an actual plan, to replace, to overwrite, to possess. Sometimes I'd sit in my car outside the house just staring at the front door, afraid to go in. I felt like a trespasser in the one place that used to feel safe. I started missing work. I stopped replying to my friends. I thought I was going crazy. I'd hear sounds at night, drawers opening, trash bags rustling, whispers, only to find out in the morning another piece of Mom was gone. I began hiding things under my mattress. Her old perfume bottle, her letters, anything. I even carried a small photo of her in my wallet like a talisman, because it genuinely felt like if I wasn't careful, my mother might actually disappear. Not just from the house, from reality. It all boiled over on a Sunday afternoon. I came home early from a freelance meeting, holding a cup of coffee, exhausted but calm. As I walked through the front hallway, I heard Jean upstairs, humming again, that same cheerful little tune, like she was doing something wholesome. I climbed the stairs slowly, then I saw it. She was sitting on the floor of my mother's old room now, her closet with a cardboard box in front of her, full of my mother's letters, her journals, old Polaroids of me and her at the park, everything. Jean was holding one of the photos and she was smiling, not sweetly smiling like she was proud. I asked what she was doing. She didn't flinch. "I'm finishing what I started," she said, almost cheerful. "You need to let go of this obsession. This house needs to move forward." She held up a Polaroid of my mom holding me as a baby, and she ripped it in half right in front of me. Something inside me snapped. I shouted at her, really shouted, telling her to stop, to get out of that room, to stay away from my mother's things. My voice cracked. I wasn't even sure what I was saying anymore. It was rage, heartbreak, panic, grief all coming out like fire. She stood up slowly, looked me dead in the eyes, and said, "You will call me Mom now, and I don't ever want to hear that woman's name again in this house. Do you understand?" At that exact moment, my father came in through the doorway. I looked at him, begging him, silently waiting for him to finally do something. "Stand up for me. Stand up for Mom. Just say her name." He didn't. He put his hand on Jean's shoulder and said, "Evan, she's your family now. You need to respect her wishes." I felt like my chest caved in. I stood there shaking, My father's eyes were blank, tired, like he had surrendered completely. I couldn't even form words. Jean was smiling again, triumphant. So I did the only thing that felt like survival. I walked past them, grabbed the box from her hands, and started pulling out the letters, stuffing everything into my backpack. She tried to snatch them back. I actually had to push her hand away. I remember her calling me ungrateful and disrespectful. Then she said it. Her memory is toxic. This family is mine now. I almost threw up. I stormed out of the house with the backpack, shaking, enraged, heartbroken. My dad didn't follow. He didn't call. Not that day. Not that night. That evening, I sat in my car in a grocery store parking lot, holding those ripped photos like fragments of a person I was still trying so hard to keep alive. I remember thinking, if I don't fight for her, who will? I felt like I was the only one left trying to keep her spirit breathing. Something changed in me that night. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was awake. I decided I wasn't going to let that woman rewrite my life. I started contacting my relatives on my mom's side again. I asked for copies of old pictures, stories, recordings, anything. I scanned them, saved them, backed them up in 3 different drives. I made a private online folder called Her Legacy. And I made a silent promise to myself. Jean will never erase her. If I had to leave that house, I would. If my father wanted to forget, that was his choice, but I wasn't going down with them. Leaving that house was the hardest thing I'd ever done, and also the most liberating. I moved into a small apartment across town. Nothing impressive, but it was mine, for the first time in years. I felt like I could breathe without checking over my shoulder in case another memory was being thrown into a trash bag. I decorated the place with things that reminded me of her, a floral print curtain like the one she sewed, an old photograph of her smiling in the garden, even the same brand of vanilla candles she used to light in the evenings. I didn't care if anyone thought it was excessive. It kept her close to me. It kept me sane. I created a digital archive of everything about her photos, her handwriting, voice messages my aunt had saved on an old phone. I made a small altar, lit a candle on her birthday. And slowly, something shifted. The grief wasn't just pain anymore. It had weight. Yes, but it started to give me strength. Because in a world where someone tried so hard to erase her, choosing to remember her became an act of defiance, an act of love. I started talking about her more openly, in conversations with coworkers, in late-night phone calls with friends, in journal entries. I found that people didn't find it depressing, they found it beautiful. Some even shared their own stories of people they'd lost, and how others in their lives tried to move on too fast. For the first time, I felt a strange solidarity. One night, I looked at an old photo of her holding me as a baby, the same photo Jean had ripped. I had taped it back together, and the more I stared at it, the more clarity I felt that woman gave me life, gave me love. She shaped the best parts of who I am, and no one, not Jean, not even my father, could take that away from me. So maybe I wasn't successful in the sense the world often defines it. I didn't win a lawsuit. I didn't get revenge. But I did something that mattered more. I saved her from being forgotten. I saved myself, too. I still remember one thing she used to say when I was little. Love is the part of a person that never really dies. She was right. And maybe someone somewhere hearing this story will remember someone they lost and realize that holding on doesn't make them weak. It makes them brave. If you've listened this far, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. Maybe you've gone through something similar. Maybe someone tried to rewrite your past, or silence the memory of someone you loved. If that's something you've experienced, I would honestly love to hear about it. Not just to hear more stories, but because I truly believe that remembering together is a form of resistance. Tell me in the comments. Has anyone ever tried to erase someone who mattered to you? Did anyone ever make you feel like your grief was inconvenient or old news? How did you deal with it? I read every comment, and sometimes what you share ends up helping someone else more than you know. If this story touched something in you, or made you feel less alone, please consider subscribing to this channel. I share real stories like this all the time. Stories that hit something raw and honest. Stories that remind us what it means to love, to lose, and to fight for who we are. Hit the like button if you believe some people should never be forgotten. Share this video if you know someone who might need to hear it tonight. And remember, holding on to someone's memory isn't weakness, it's loyalty, it's courage. Sometimes, it's the most powerful thing we can do. Thank you for being here. And if you have a story of your own, I'm listening.